This is Tim Queenie, editor of Ocean Navigator magazine, and I'm talking to Richard Degrasse, who is the author of Installing a Propane Gas Stove, an installment in our Voyaging Tips series. So Dick, talk about the location on the stern that you chose to place your propane tanks. It's sort of exposed there to boarding waves, and you could get bumped by another vessel. So tell me, how's that going for you?
Well, if you look around a mooring field, for example, Tim, that we're in all the time, we spend 6 months of the year on that boat, and you're going to find propane tanks hanging all over the place, and a lot more exposed than the ones we have. We've never had anything hit them at all. Maybe a seagull land on them or something like that, but other than that, they've never been hit. Mm-hmm. And I was concerned about the same thing that you're talking about when I put them on the stern platform. And you have to have a platform big enough. On some of the older boats, too, have a platform big enough so that you can locate the tank upright on the stern. I was concerned about that, too. I was concerned about waves washing it off the boat. But we've been all over the Caribbean, and fortunately, the tartan design does not poop easily.
Oh, right.
So you're not going to get waves breaking over the stern. We've never had them even going to Europe with the boat. So we never had any problems like that.
Oh, I see. Now, well, tell me a little bit. Why is that? What is it about the design that keeps with the tartan that keeps that from happening?
The most difficult part of a propane installation on an older boat is having some form of sealed container with a drain in it, because propane is heavier than air, and it settles in the bilge. That's the danger of it, because it settles in the bilge. It's heavier than air, and so you have to have a sealed container somewhere on the boat to store the tank, unless it's sitting out in the air.
Right.
And that's the whole rationale for putting it on the stern rail. It's out in the air. It's ventilated totally, of course. Right. And today's shock cord is so bloody strong that you put 3/8 shock cord in there, I swear you could swing on it. Right. The stuff is so tough, and if you through bolt the base, as I did, and hook the shock cord through the through bolts, 4 of them, around the tank itself, I think you could be pooped. I think that you could go a long way before you knock the tanks off. You really would. I mean, you'd have to break something because it's through bolted right through the stern rail on the boat.
Right.
And so it doesn't look so bad. Some of them really look ugly.
Right.
And I do have a sense of aesthetics a little bit on a boat. And so we cover them with the covers that I showed in the pictures.
Right.
And so you don't even notice them anymore. And if you look around the mooring field, you'll find a lot of tanks in the same difficulty, a lot of them, big ones, 20-pounders and so forth. They're trying to find a place to put them.
Right.
And so that's the rationale. And anyway, that's why we put them on the stern, and I have no fear at all. We forget about them back there, right, and don't even think about them.
Yeah.
And we've been everywhere. The location is no consideration at all in terms of being washed overboard.
Right. And now you mentioned the covers. What are those covers made out of?
Yeah, I wish I could remember the material. It's kind of a glossy, slick material. I don't know the type of material it is. It was made by a very close friend who makes a lot of stuff. If I quote a name, I'm sure I'm going to be wrong, but it's easy stuff to sew, and it's stuff that lasts forever. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure what it is, but it's a slick fabric of some sort, and I just don't know the name of it. I wish I did. Now that you mentioned it, I'd have to go back and look. I probably could find it in one of the catalogs.
Right, it's like a sunbrella type fabric.
Yes, it is indeed, and I don't think it's umbrella, but it is a type of material like that. Yes.
Right. Now, how did you deal with getting the feed line from the tanks through into the boat? How'd you deal with?
Okay.
How'd you keep that waterproof?
That's what you do is first of all you locate you got 2 tanks back aft, and one of them, of course, on the port side of our boat is a spare. It's not connected to anything. The one on the starboard side is the one that we use because the stove is on the starboard side. So I located the tank on the starboard side and made a very simple aluminum bracket to hold the relay, which is very important. The relay and the gauge, although I never used the gauge very much, but the relay and the gauge. The relay is important because you want to be able to shut the tank off at the tank, not at the stove. You do that too, of course. You shut the burner off on the stove. But you really want to shut the tank off back aft so that you don't have any chance of leakage into the boat if the line from the tank to the stove breaks or leaks or something like that. You're really trying to avoid any kind of propane in the bilge. Because, as you know, every once in a while a boat blows sky high,
right.
And that's usually because propane is in the bilge. So you have to. I've made an L bracket, located the relay on that bracket, and it happens to be a relay with a gauge on it that you can buy, and locate that, and then run the propane. They have this flexible propane cable or tubing or whatever you want to call it, tubing, I guess you call it. And it's extremely good. And you drill a hole in the deck, which we hate to do, of course.
Right.
And you put the tubing through the hole, and along with the tubing, you put your 12-volt, 2 wires for your 12-volt to switch the relay on and off. And so those two go down through the after side of the deck, in the aft of the boat, the rear of the boat, and down through, and then you feed it through, which, of course, is always a problem on any boat, feeding the tubing and the wire through the various bulkheads. And each time you go through the bulkhead, you use a little sealer, 3M sealer or something like that, to make sure the hose don't leak. So if you get a break in the tubing, it's not going to leak into the bilge. And, you try to seal it up as you feed it
Right.
forward to the stove.
I see.
And then when you get to the stove, it's all flexible stuff. And you just tie it into the stove. But I made sure I had a nice switch right next to the stove, electrical switch, so I can control the relay back aft.
Right.
It's the gas relay, and they have a red light on it. So anytime the stove is on, that red light is lit. And we make sure on the boat, one of our, everybody has certain procedures on a boat, and we make sure that light is off all the time.
Right.
So that the switch on the propane tanks is basically off.
Right.
And right now the boat is stored, and the tank is turned off at the tank. Not only is the relay off, but I shut the tank off itself. You just got to be careful with propane. That's all.
Right.
But I love the installation, Tim. You can put 2 tanks on the boat.
Right.
They're perfectly ventilated, and I don't think you could pull them off the boat, and they're not going to be hit by anything. They never have. The backstay and other stuff back there is in the radar tower and things like that, a lot more susceptible to being hit than the tanks.
Right. And how often do you, what kind of maintenance is required on that relay? How often do you replace it?
I've asked the same question, and every once in a while when I pull the cover off the tank we're using and want to swap tanks, which is about every 6 weeks, the 10-pound tanks last about 6 weeks, 5 weeks, something like that, and using the stove every day, of course.
Right.
I look back there, and I haven't had any maintenance in 3 or 4 years. I keep saying, well, it's time for that relay to fail, but it hasn't.
Yeah.
So I look at it, it works, and so I don't replace it.
Right.
It hasn't bothered us at all. It's out of the weather a little bit because it's under the cover.
Right.
But it's still exposed, in a sense it's not buried in the bilge somewhere.
Right. Now, have you find that you use the stove more now that it's propane fired? You bet.
It was such a hassle with the kerosene and alcohol stoves that we just gave up. It was more work than it's just a hassle, big hassle. Even though I had the most expensive kerosene stove in existence, lovely piece with Optimus burners and all of that, preceding this propane, I just gave up on it. The oven was too small for any of my wife's pans and whatnot, so we really couldn't use it very well.
Right.
But the Tasco stove, the one we have now, it's just been superb. Made in Taunton, Massachusetts, and I really like the stove. And it holds the pans. It makes it like she can make cookies and bread. I mean, that's what you want. We use it a lot more.
Yeah, that's great.
To answer your question. Yeah, it's a solution for older boats. I can tell you that.
Right. Is there anything at all you like better about the kerosene approach, or is that it's just totally superseded by the propane?
Oh, the propane is so much better.
Yeah, it's
100% better. We have a fire starter, Cliff, that you buy in the store. The same old fire starter, clicker bicker we call it. But whatever it is, you turn the gas on, throw the switch, turn the gas on, and boom, off you go, and you're making coffee.
Right. Yeah,
so you can't. The alcohol and kerosene, I think, are things of the past.
Yeah.
And diesel fuel too, diesel stoves. I have some experience with those. But propane, if you set it up properly and it's safe, you can't beat it.
Right.
And if you like the appearance of the Taylor kerosene stove, fine.
Right.
But if you're living on a boat every day, it becomes too much of a hassle. Kerosene is tough.
Yeah. And nothing should ever stand between a sailor and his coffee or her coffee.
You got that exactly right. But it is. We've used the same situation, the same stove arrangement now for several years, so it's not new. But I haven't seen anything like that in our mooring field and sailing, which we do every year. We sail a lot.
Right.
I've not seen anything like it, so that's why I thought I'd report to you, Tim.
Right. All right. Well, great. Thanks, Dick. Thanks for answering our questions. And it was one of our Ocean Navigator conversations. And tune in for more.